Just 8 minutes for God, you will see His power. The importance of setting aside time for prayer. Imagine waking up to a world that feels like it's spinning just a little too fast. Emails piling up, meetings scheduled back to back, and that ever-present pressure to keep everything together. Now picture this. Before diving into the chaos, you carve out 8 quiet minutes. Just 8. You sit with a cup of coffee, close your eyes, and let your thoughts settle as you connect with something bigger than yourself. That's the power of prayer. A small, intentional pause that can shift your entire day. In today's hustle-driven culture, especially in the business world, we're conditioned to keep moving, to push harder, to do more. Deadlines don't wait, and competition is always breathing down your neck. It's easy to get swept up in that current and lose sight of who you are beneath the to-do lists and KPIs. But here's the thing. Prayer isn't about escaping reality. It's about grounding yourself in it. Those 8 minutes aren't a luxury. They're a necessity. They're like hitting the reset button on a frantic morning, giving you a chance to breathe, to realign, and to step into your day with purpose instead of panic. Think about how a farmer prepares the soil before planting seeds. Without that preparation, the crop doesn't stand a chance. Prayer is like that for your soul. It tills the ground of your heart, making it ready to face whatever the day throws at you. Maybe you're a manager facing a tough team meeting, or an entrepreneur pitching to investors with everything on the line. Before you walk into that room, a moment of prayer can steady your nerves and sharpen your focus. It's not magic. It's a deliberate choice to invite calm into the storm. Let's get practical for a second. You don't need a fancy setup or an hour-long ritual. Find a quiet corner, your car before heading into the office, a park bench during lunch, or even your bedroom before the kids wake up. Start small, 8 minutes. Whisper your worries, your hopes, or just sit in silence, letting your mind settle. Maybe you say, God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this day. Help me. Or maybe you don't say anything at all. The point is to show up, to be present, and to trust that something shifts when you do. I've seen this play out in real life. A friend of mine, Sarah, runs a small bakery in Oregon. A few years back, she hit a rough patch. Supply costs spiked, and she lost a big client. She told me she started waking up 10 minutes earlier every day just to pray. Nothing elaborate, just a quiet moment to ask for strength and clarity. She said it didn't fix everything overnight, but it changed how she carried the weight. She'd walk into her shop with a little more hope, a little more grit. Over time, she found new suppliers and even landed a catering gig that turned things around. She swears those morning prayers were her lifeline, not because they rewrote her bank account, but because they rewrote her perspective. Prayer also reminds us of what matters most. In business, it's tempting to measure your worth by profit margins or LinkedIn likes. But when you pause to pray, you're pulled back to the bigger picture. Your values, your family, the legacy you want to leave. It's like a compass in a storm, pointing you north when everything else feels off course. For me, those moments of prayer are when I remember that my identity isn't tied to my latest project's success or failure. It's deeper than that, rooted in something unshakable. And here's a beautiful secret. Those 8 minutes don't just benefit you, they ripple outward. When you start your day centered, you bring that peace into your interactions. Your employees notice it. Your clients feel it. You're less likely to snap at a coworker or stress over a missed deadline. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. Prayer doesn't erase challenges, but it equips you to face them with a steady heart. So why 8 minutes? Why not 5 or 15? 8's just a starting point. A sweet spot that's doable but meaningful. It's enough time to quiet the noise without feeling like a chore. But if 8 doesn't work for you, make it yours. The key is consistency, not perfection. Over time, you'll find those minutes become a sacred rhythm, a lifeline that keeps you tethered through the toughest days. In a world that glorifies hustle, choosing prayer is a quiet rebellion. It says, I'm more than my output. It's an act of faith, not just in a higher power, but in yourself. You're worth those 8 minutes. Your peace is worth fighting for. And in those small, sacred pauses, you'll discover a strength you didn't know you had. Finding comfort in vulnerability. Let's talk about something we don't often admit in the business world. We're not invincible. Behind the polished resumes and confident handshakes, we all have moments when the cracks show, when the deal falls through, the numbers don't add up, or the weight of it all feels too heavy to carry. That's where prayer steps in, not as a fix-all, but as a safe place to let the mask slip. When you pray, you're allowed to be real, to be vulnerable, and that's where the healing starts. Vulnerability gets a bad rap sometimes. We're taught to power through, to hide our struggles behind a brave face. Especially in a high-stakes environment like business, showing weakness feels risky, like you're handing your competitors an edge. But here's the truth. Admitting you're human isn't a flaw, it's a strength. And prayer gives you permission to do that without judgment. It's a conversation where you don't have to pretend everything's fine. You can say, I'm scared, or I'm lost, or I don't know what to do next, and it's okay. Picture a small business owner named Mark. He's got a landscaping company in Texas, and last year, a drought hit hard. Jobs dried up, literally, and he was staring at bills he couldn't pay. One night, after everyone else was asleep, he sat on his porch and prayed. Nothing fancy, just a raw, honest plea. God, I'm in over my head. I need help. He told me later that he cried, big, messy tears, and it felt like a dam breaking. But in that moment, something shifted. He didn't get $1 million contract the next day, but he got peace. And with that peace came a new idea. He started offering water conservation consultations, a pivot that kept his business afloat. That's what prayer does. It meets you in the mess. It's not about having the perfect words or a polished pitch. It's about showing up as you are, broken pieces and all. When you let yourself be vulnerable like that, you're not just unloading your burdens, you're opening the door to something bigger. Maybe it's a fresh perspective, a sudden burst of creativity, or just the courage to keep going. Whatever it is, it starts with being real. There's science behind this too. Not that prayer needs a lab to prove its worth, but it's fascinating. Studies show that practices like prayer or meditation lower cortisol, the stress hormone that keeps us wired and tired. When you sit in that vulnerable space and release your worries, your body responds. Your shoulders loosen, your breath slows, and your mind clears. It's like a reset for your nervous system. A reminder that you don't have to carry it all alone. But vulnerability in prayer isn't just about you. It's relational. When you share your struggles with a higher power, you're building trust. It's like confiding in a friend who never interrupts, never judges, just listens. And in that exchange, you find comfort. You're not shouting into a void, you're being heard. For some, that's a spiritual truth. For others, it's a felt experience. Either way, it lightens the load. Let's take it a step further. Vulnerability through prayer can change how you lead. Imagine you're a team leader and your department's under fire. Sales are down, morale's low. You could grit your teeth and fake it till you make it, or you could take a moment to pray, not just for success, but for wisdom, for patience, for your team. In that quiet, honest space, you might realize the problem isn't just numbers, it's people. Maybe your team needs encouragement more than a pep talk. That insight comes from vulnerability, from admitting you don't have all the answers and asking for help. I remember a time when I was juggling too much, work, family, a side project that wouldn't quit. I felt like a failure, like I was dropping every ball. One morning I prayed, and it wasn't pretty. I rambled about how tired I was, how I didn't know if I could keep up. No lightning bolts came, but I felt lighter. Later that day, I had a random conversation with a colleague who offered to take something off my plate. Coincidence? Maybe, but I'd like to think it was more than that. Prayer also teaches you to embrace the unknown. In business, we crave control, spreadsheets, forecasts, 5-year plans, but life doesn't always cooperate. When you pray through your vulnerability, you're saying, I can't fix this alone, and that's okay. It's a surrender that doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like freedom. You stop white-knuckling every outcome and start trusting that there's a bigger story at play. Over time, this practice builds resilience. You learn that vulnerability isn't a one-off, it's a muscle. The more you lean into it, the stronger you get. You're not afraid to feel the fear, to name the doubt, because you know there's a space where it's safe to fall apart and come back together. That's the comfort prayer offers, a refuge where you're enough, just as you are. So next time the weight feels too heavy, try it. Find a quiet spot, let the walls down, and pray. Be messy, be honest, be you. You might be surprised at the strength you find on the other side. The community aspect of prayer. Prayer isn't always a solo journey. It's a bridge that connects us. In a world where business often feels cutthroat and isolating, coming together to pray can weave a thread of unity through the chaos. Whether it's a quick moment with coworkers before a big presentation or a gathering at your local church, community prayer has a way of lifting us up when we need it most. It's not just about the words spoken. It's about the shared heartbeat of hope. Think about the last time you felt truly supported. Maybe it was a friend who showed up with coffee when you were stressed, or a family member who listened when you needed to vent. Community prayer amplifies that feeling. It's a collective exhale, a reminder that you're not in this alone. In a business setting where egos can clash and pressure builds, praying together softens the edges. It creates a space where titles fade and people show up as humans, flawed, hopeful, and in it together. Take a team I heard about in Colorado. They worked at a tech startup and things were rough. Layoffs loomed and the vibe was tense. One day, someone suggested they pray together before their morning huddle. Nothing formal, just a circle in the break room, a few words about strength and clarity. At first, it felt awkward. Some weren't even religious, but they stuck with it. Over weeks, something shifted. They started talking more openly, brainstorming better, even laughing again. The prayer didn't save the company, but it saved the team. They found a rhythm, a trust that carried them through. That's the magic of praying as a group. It's less about the outcome and more about the connection. When you bow your head with others, you're saying, we're in this together. It's a quiet rebellion against the every man for himself mentality that can creep into workplaces. And it doesn't have to be heavy or preachy. It can be as simple as, hey, let's take a minute to breathe and ask for some help today. The act itself builds a bond. Community prayer also amplifies energy. There's something about hearing another voice echo your hopes or share your burdens. It makes them feel more real, more manageable. I've been part of prayer circles where one person's gratitude sparked mine, or someone's plea for courage reminded me to dig deeper. It's like passing a torch. The light grows brighter with each hand it touches. In a business context, that shared energy can spark creativity. Suddenly, the team's not just surviving the week. They're dreaming up solutions no one saw coming. And it's not just for the office. Think about your neighborhood, your church, your book club, any place where people gather. When my friend Lisa's catering business took a hit during a slow season, she started hosting a small prayer group at her house. Just 5 people, once a week, sipping tea and praying for each other's dreams. Lisa said it wasn't just the prayers that helped. It was the laughter, the stories, the feeling of being seen. One of those friends connected her with a new client, and the business picked up. Community prayer doesn't just lift your spirit, it weaves a safety net of relationships. There's a humility in it too. When you pray with others, you're admitting you don't have it all figured out, and neither do they. That levels the playing field. A CEO and an intern can stand side by side, asking for the same grace. It's a reminder that success isn't about who climbs highest, it's about who lifts others along the way. In that shared vulnerability, you find strength, not the loud, flashy kind, but the quiet, steady kind that holds a team together. Let's be real. Not everyone's comfortable with group prayer, and that's okay. If your workplace isn't the praying type, start small. Maybe it's just you and one trusted colleague, or a virtual chat with a friend across the country. The point isn't to force it, it's to find your people, the ones who'll hold space with you. And if faith isn't your thing, think of it as intention setting, a moment to rally around a common goal. The power's in the togetherness. Over time, this practice builds something lasting. Teams that pray together often report better communication, more empathy, even higher morale. It's not a cure-all. Deadlines still loom and conflicts still happen, but it's a foundation. When the storm hits, you've got a crew to weather it with. And in the good times, you've got people to celebrate with too. So next time you're facing a mountain, whether it's a work crisis or a personal struggle, don't go it alone. Gather a few souls, bow your heads and pray. Keep it simple, keep it real. You'll walk away lighter, stronger, and a little less alone. That's the gift of community prayer, a lifeline that reminds us we're all part of something bigger.